In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. He was in the beginning with God. What has come into being in him was life, and the life was the light of all people. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness did not overcome it. In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep. And a wind from God swept over the face of the waters. And then God spoke and said, "Let there be light." And there was light, and God saw that it was good. And God separated dark from light, and called them night and day, and that was the end of the first day. And God said, "Let us make a dome to separate all of the waters." And those that remained stayed below and would eventually become seas. And in the dome he called the sky. And that was the end of the second day. And then God said, "Let the waters gather into seas and the dry land appear." And God saw that it was good. And then God said, "Let the land grow plants of every kind." And the land did just that. And God saw that it was good. And that was the end of the third day. And then God said, "Let there be lights in the dome to separate day and night. And let them be a sign for all of the passing of the seasons, and of the days, and of the years." The sun was for the day, and the moon and the stars for the night, and it was good. And that was the end of the fourth day. And then God said, "Let the waters be filled with living things, and the sky filled with birds." And he saw that it was indeed good. God looked out on his creation in the sky and in the seas, and he said, "Be fruitful and multiply." And that was the end of the fifth day. Then God said, "Let the land bring forth living creatures," and God saw that it was good. And God created mankind and gave him dominion over all of the animals. And man was created in God's image, and God blessed them. Then God looked out over all of his creation on the land and said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply." And God looked out over all that he had created in the previous days and said that it was good. And that was the end of the sixth day. And on the seventh day, God rested from all of his acts of creation. And man lived in an amazing place called the Garden of Eden. But he was given one command, and one command only, and that was that he could not eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, but he could eat from anything else in the garden. And God looked out and saw that man needed a helpmate. So he took a rib from Adam. And from that rib, God created a new person, and she was called woman, for she was taken out of man. And together they lived in the garden, and they were not ashamed. But the serpent spoke to the woman to convince her to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And both man and woman ate the fruit from the tree, and their eyes were opened, and they hid from God. But God found them, and they were punished, and they were expelled from the garden. And they would spend the rest of their lives in hard work, never to return. They had two sons, Cain and Abel, both who made offerings to God. Abel's was pleasing before God, and Cain's was not. And in a fit of jealousy, Cain killed his brother Abel. And Cain was punished for the rest of his life with a mark that prevented anyone from hurting him. And generations would pass from Adam to his son's sons, and eventually to a man named Noah, who would be called faithful to God. But Noah lived in a time of great wickedness, and people laughed at him for his beliefs. Noah tried to convince the people that God was sending a flood to punish them, but they would not believe him. God commanded Noah to build an ark, and eventually the ark was finished as the storm clouds were coming in, and the animals began to gather 2 by 2. They would go and they would fill the ark with all of Noah's family. After 40 days and 40 nights of storms and 150 days of waiting for the waters to recede, the ark came to rest on Mount Ararat. Noah sent out a dove to see if it was time to leave the ark, and the dove returned with the sign of an olive leaf. And Noah built an altar to God to make an offering for the end of their journey. And God made a covenant with Noah that he would never again wipe away the world with a flood. And a sign of that covenant was a bow in the clouds. And more generations passed, and once again humankind thought that they could challenge God. They began to grow prideful and thought that they could make themselves God equal, and so they began to build. And so they built a tower that would reach into the very heavens themselves, so their pride would be fulfilled. But God, seeing what they were doing, confused their language, and they scattered because they now spoke many languages. And there the tower remained, unfinished and abandoned by its people. Eventually, more generations would pass, and a new covenant was made with God. In time, God would promise Abraham that his descendants would be God's people, and they would be more numerous than the sand on the ground and the stars in the heavens above.